Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
I had a teacher who said once, there are some people who go through life, who tiptoe through life so that they can arrive at death safely. There are people who tiptoe through life so they can arrive at death safely. That was not my mom. She, from the moment she was born, she was all in on this world. She's, yes, I'm here and I'm here to live big. So she tapped into things that corroborated that already enthusiastic, high energy person that she was. In elementary school, she said she remembered she was walking down the hallway and she heard a teacher yelling at her classroom or reprimanding her classroom, and she said, "You just wasted 5 minutes and we will never get that 5 minutes back ever again." And my mom thought to herself, I'm never going to lose my 5 minutes. So she's tried to pack in her life in every minute and never waste a moment. And then she shared another memory that she had also in elementary school, that she was walking down the street. She said, I remember exactly where I was. I stopped. I was looking down at my saddle shoes. I had a brown and white checkered skirt. And she said, I had this awareness, this thought, that she said, the world does not owe me anything. She's in elementary school. The world does not owe me anything. In that moment, she became an incredibly self-empowered person. She never expected anyone else, her parents, her world around her, to give her anything, that anything that she was going to have in her life, she was going to create. So these were ideas that already matched the energy and enthusiasm that she had for life. So by 4th grade, the age old of 4th grade, she had her 4th grade teacher pull her aside and said, Barbara, you are overextending yourself. You're in too many activities, you have to pull back. 4th grade, it's been her life. Some of you are like this still. It's just a way of being, that you just live life fully. This is how my mom has always lived her life, passionately, and caring deeply about this world. So her mother had dementia, and she didn't want to have dementia. That was her biggest fear, because she used to say, I'm just going to take a little white pill if they ever diagnose me, because I can't stand the idea of not mentally not being here. So she was in denial. So we never got to have a conversation about, okay, these things are shifting, let's say our goodbyes now. That never happened because she was in denial that it was ever happening. And so she had dementia, and it got progressively worse. You know, they say it goes like this and then it'll go like that. So she would suddenly get much worse. And so even though my last, I would say 3 visits to there and her coming here, she wasn't quite fully present. And so I haven't had a real conversation with my mom for many years. But we were very blessed that, and when I was there, she would forget who I was, and my brothers experienced the same thing. But with Zoom and COVID, we all got on Zoom with her. The social worker would put up the computer, and so I had my 3 brothers and myself, and we did it every week at the same time, and she never forgot us. That's what was interesting. In person, she would forget, but on Zoom, and I would say, if one of them was missing, Mom, can you tell me which one's missing? And she knew who was missing. It was like she was almost more present, and she was holding this space for my brothers and I to meet every week. And we were so used to her and doing this that I know it's strange, but it comes as a shock. She's going down, and she's going down fast. So I took the plane, and my brothers got to all spend one-on-one time with her, and they asked her to stay until I got there, and she did. And so I got to go be with her. And I'm grateful because I didn't have a lot of leftover things with my mom. That my mom lost her dad when she was a freshman in college. It was a sudden heart attack, so it was a shock for her. My dad lost his mother when he was 7, That's who I'm named after. So both my parents had a parent that died young. So as a child, I was very aware that my parents could go at any minute, that was a possibility. So as I grew into my adulthood, my relationship with my parents was always a very high priority, and I did a lot of work with them. Mostly gratitude, giving them lots of gratitude, but when doing my shadow work, did that with them. I didn't hide anything. And so I felt very complete. There wasn't a lot of stuff hanging out. So when I was with my mom, I just told her, it's not over, Mom. We're together. We're mother and daughter for all eternity. We're going to keep working this stuff out. And I don't mean working stuff out like issues, but like growing together, because we've grown. She separated from my dad and was on her own, finding her own voice, and I was finding my own voice. So we did it very much together. We talked about our new learnings. I said, this is continuing. I plan to hang out with you now and forever. Both my grandmothers have come to visit me, so I don't have the fear or even a doubt, because I've experienced it. And I don't think people just go into energy. I don't think our individual personhood is sort of, okay, that's done, now you're just going to be energy. No, we've been developing ourselves for a reason, and it's not just for Earth. That's a very sort of Earth-centric world view. It's to continue to grow and develop. So I feel very much connected with my mom and my grandmother, and we're just going to continue this journey. And it was love, and it was, we all know, because I know you've all been through this. I'm not speaking like that's the beauty, is that we all go through these experiences of losing people that we love. And they're all different. And so as I'm telling her, I'm really feeling like she's hearing me. And it was beautiful. And even after, so my brothers left around, so it was around 12 that my brothers left. The nurse said, we're going to come in every hour to check on her. They rolled her over so I couldn't hold her hand anymore, so I just put my hand on her back. Well, first I sang to her, because she sang to us when we were children. She was in the Cleveland Orchestra chorus, and so she had a beautiful voice, and so her thing was to sing to us. So I sang to her. And then when I was done, just kept my hand on her back, and I was tired, and I fell asleep, and the nurses said they were going to come in every hour, so the nurses were there at 1 a.m., and they're just looking at me and basically saying, she's gone. And she looks so different. It's amazing to me how different the body looks when the soul has left. It's not the same. But I did kiss her, and I thought, wow, she's still present, like right here on the skirts. She hasn't completely gone over yet. And so we did a prayer. My brother came to us at 2 a.m. He came to pick me up they didn't want me staying there. He and his wife, Arisa, by the way, I say their name because they'll be here next week. And they came and picked me up, and we did a prayer for her and blessed her and said goodbye. And if it was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. And the next day with my brothers, we were going through, she had 2 rooms full of stuff, and we just have, like my parents, even though they were divorced, they were friends until they died, till my dad died, or transitioned to the other side, because they had the same values, and my brothers and I are the same way. We're very different persons, but our values are exactly the same. So it's just, we're telling stories and memories and going through all her belongings and talking about her financial affairs and how we're going to do the funeral, and we're just like all on the same page. It's just, and always my oldest brother, Dan's the leader. And then we're going to the funeral home, and Dan's taking us to all these different places in Cleveland that we used to live, our old houses, our old neighborhood. So it's just all this, and I realized I haven't been with my brothers, for just the 4 of us without wives or spouses, since the 80s, for 40 years. So it was just like this return to childhood. And I think I shared a little bit about some work I've been doing with my brothers, shadow work that I hadn't done. I'd done it with my parents, but not with my brothers. And it just so prepared me for this. I was so present, and not as a little girl, but as a fully grown adult, and able to talk with them and share with them things effortlessly. Because all that stuff, I had worked through it so I could be free and talk with them. So the key with grief, it seems to me, and I was reading this book, I can't even remember the name of it. I just got it yesterday. It's a book about emotions. I know the author's name is Carla McLaren. And interestingly, the preface, it opens with her mother's transition. And she talks about our grief versus other people's griefs. And this was kind of interesting. I was actually thinking about that this morning, that I actually felt quite free in my grief for my mother, and it felt good. And she said when it starts to feel really bad is when we start taking on other people's unhealed stuff. So she was talking about when she was first grieving for her mother, she was actually grieving her mother. She felt she was grieving her mom's grief, the stuff that her mom hadn't healed herself, the work that she hadn't done, and she was grieving. And then she goes, oh no, this is my mom's grief. This isn't my grief. And so her mother was in a coma at the time, and she said, Mom, I have to give this over to you. This is your grief. And but she had done her own work, and so her grief, she said, if we do our healing work, and this is important, when we do our healing work, our own healing work, not our siblings' healing work, not our parents' healing work, but our own healing work, she talks about our emotions will take care of us. I love that. Our emotions will take care of us. Grief will sink us deep into the soil. It takes us into a place where we just have to stop. The hardest part about feeling it or just being in the presence is I do want to stop. I just want to not think about things. And she said that's where healthy grief will take you, into the depth of emotion. But if you keep letting it take you there and you have done your work, it will take you into a beautiful place. That what stops us from fully grieving is unhealed wounds. And so it's our job. Reverend Kathy Ann Lewis reminded us this past week with an email. It's a beautiful email. And she was saying, what we have to realize, sometimes we talk about this work and it feels narcissistic. It's all about healing me. It's all about healing me. But she said it's actually going down generation by generation. That if we haven't healed the work of that we see our parents have their stuff, and if we haven't done our healing work, we're just going to, even if we don't do it intentionally, kids pick it up. That's why they have this whole DNA. It goes down from our grandparents to it's funny that my grandma's been talking to me about this healing, because it goes through our subconscious mind. It's not always conscious. We have to do our work if we want to change and make it a better world, not just externally or materially, but emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, for our children. All the work that we are doing for ourselves is not just for ourselves, but it's for the next generation. And not just your own children, but your nieces and your nephews and your friends' children. We're all impacting each other. So it was very busy. We were talking and got a lot done, and very busy. I wasn't totally sure how I was feeling, because I cried when I first heard, but ultimately I was feeling okay. So I thought, I came home, put something out on Facebook, but then I had already signed up for a silent retreat months ago. And so suddenly I just got really quiet. Just had no desire to talk anymore. And I was listening to, so I thought, well, I'll just listen to the We Can Do Hard Things podcast for today. So I drive to the Villa Maria. And it happened to be, or it was last week, I'm not sure when it was a podcast, the most recent one at the time, and it was with Andrea Gibson. Pretty sure I got her name. Anyone know Andrea Gibson? Look her up. She's awesome. She's a poet. And beautiful. Well, I didn't know anything about her. And here's what happened with that podcast. It basically turned out to be a podcast about grief and joy. And the talk, the Sunday's grief and joy. So I'm thinking I should really listen to this for Sunday's talk. But as I'm listening to it, I can't hold on to the words. My mind has stopped at this point. I'm not analyzing. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just feeling. And that's Andrea. Her life, poetry, and work has been about feel your feelings and feel all of them. And then in 2021, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and She said all her life she'd been a hypochondriac. She said, like a terrible one. I always knew. I was terrified of death. I didn't want, and she even had Lyme disease, and that was terrible. And she's had, different things, but death terrified her. And she said, and then when I got the diagnosis, the worst thing that I've been terrified my whole life happened. And but remember, her path is about feeling all your feelings. So there wasn't blocks. She just dropped into total surrender and trust that meaning she still did the work that she needed to do to take care of the cancer, the chemotherapy, the food. But she said, I just surrendered everything. And what happened was she went into a state of bliss for 11 months. She said, I feel embarrassed to talk about this, but I had a direct experience of the divine for 11 months of bliss. It wasn't my bliss, it was just bliss moving, that the grief took her to such a deep level, it turned into bliss. She had done her forgiveness work. She had felt the feeling. She still felt sad, but at the same time, this joy of life, everywhere she turned, she felt this bliss of living. And I thought, wow. Now, I'm telling you this in retrospect. I'm telling you because I actually listened to the podcast again today. Because the actual podcast, when I was listening to it, going down to the retreat, my mind couldn't hold on to the words that she was saying because I wasn't in my mind place. I was just in feeling, and all I could feel, it was an hour and a half podcast, and all I could feel was the energy, and it was just this energy of, she would cry effortlessly, then she'd start laughing about something, and then she'd cry. Like the emotions, I just felt these waves of emotions, and it felt so healthy and good. She just let them flow, and I'm like, man, like today I was listening to her, I'm like, she didn't even write any of it. This was just her sharing like one thing, wise thing after another. I looked up one of her poems this morning, and I don't remember anything other than, show me your dark side and I will write a love letter to it. She accepted all life. She was like, feel your feelings, and there's beauty in all of it, and I love all of it. So she was already there. So when she was living this, her heart's just wide open, because what happened, I should probably go back. Well, I was feeling everything that she felt, and I'm crying because I needed to cry, and I laughed, and all I felt were waves of energy. And it felt more real to me than anything else that I could have heard, even though I can't repeat it. So I just was listening to it again today to figure out what she was talking about. So what happened was, then the cancer went in remission, and just as We Can Do Hard Things podcast, Glenn and Abby reached out to her to do a podcast. She had just gotten a scan back, and the cancer has come back. It's hit her liver, and there's no Western cure anyways for the cancer. And so again, just as she was sharing, and she said she noticed at one point recently that her head was going down all the time. She was looking down all the time, and she said to her partner, or I realized that's a they, Andrea, it goes by they. They went to her partner, I'm noticing I'm walking with my head down, and she said it's because I'm so in love with life, and that when I look up, my heart hurts because I love so much everything that I'm seeing. If that isn't God, I don't know what is. She's experiencing this divine presence of love in the midst of having to say, knowing that she's on this journey that has no, at least Western, she's open to healing, spiritual healing, holistic healing. The next podcast, and I listened to it on the way home from the retreat, they decided to do, I don't know the order of things, but the next podcast that I heard was about delight. And they were talking to a gentleman who really decided to embrace delight in his life. And so he was going around, and he just said, I just started practicing seeing what delighted me in the day. And he'd write it down. And he said, just like we do with gratitude, just the more you see delight, the more you're aware of delight and embrace delight, delight feeds on delight, and life just became more and more delightful. And Abby was saying, because these are podcasts you can't see, she said, I've never seen anyone who can talk for a full podcast smiling the whole time. How do you talk and smile at the same time? Because he's living in delight. And so then they've started their practice now of delight, which was fairly amusing, that they recorded a few days later. But I want to say something, because it's a time to say things that are real for me anyways. That podcast didn't do much for me. I was listening to it, I heard it, delight, look at delight. And for me, and I'm just going to say this, because it's honest, is I don't really do things because, like lists, like I don't do gratitude lists. Because for me, or like, okay, now we're all going to start doing forgiveness work, do your forgiveness to every, like I don't do work because it's a task or an assignment, because I want to experience something on the other side of it. Because for me, I think because I felt so much gratitude growing up, all my journals are just like flow with so much gratitude, and it was authentic. It was just coming from me, not because I was doing an exercise. It's because I couldn't help it. I like to feel gratitude because I can't help it, because I'm overflowing with God's joy, God's love, and God's delight. But to actually do it as an exercise, for me, that's sort of a beginning stage, and it feels a little bit shallow. It doesn't have the depth. The podcast before, when she's talking to Andrea Gibson, that I felt. That was this pouring forth. To me, it was a direct, I was hearing spirit. It was just pure spirit coming and pouring from her very soul. It wasn't categorized. And I was thinking that because actually the talk today was balancing grief and joy. And that word balancing drove me crazy. I'm like, that's intellectual. Okay, now I'm going to balance my grief and I'm going to balance my joy and make sure. Like, how do you balance something? That's an intellectual process. When you're living it, it's a natural inner flow, and that's the place from which I want to live my life and have been living my life and will continue to live my life. It doesn't mean that things are easy. It doesn't mean things... she was saying something along the line is, it's actually they've discovered that the more you think life is going to be difficult, the less difficult it becomes. That you just start opening your heart and you don't have this expectation. It's almost like what my mom said when she was little, the world doesn't owe me anything. So you don't expect, well, this should have been good. I should never have gotten cancer. I should have healed. There's no shoulds. There are no shoulds. You're just in this place of utter acceptance. So I switched the title to Grief and Joy, the Power of Acceptance, because to me that's what our life is about. Accepting what's arising in every moment authentically. If I feel like crying, I cry. If I feel like laughing, I laugh. If I feel neutral, I feel neutral. I'm not trying to get to an end result. I'm just allowing spirit to move through and as me in an authentic way. That to me is the place of healing. That's the place of growth. And if there's stuff that needs to be healed, you don't go, oh man, I screwed up, I have something to heal. No, that's what's showing up now. We live from our hearts. We live from our hearts, and our hearts will guide us every step of the way. I point to my grandmother coming and telling me to do this work, and I'm doing it with my brothers, and then I show up, and now I'm being able to have conversations with them that I haven't ever been able to have, effortlessly, because I had done the work. I didn't know all this was going to happen. I didn't prepare it as a list. We follow the heart. The heart gives us everything what we need. It's what Carla McLaren, who wrote the book, your emotions will take care of you. Feel our emotions and they'll take care of us. So grief and joy, they work hand in hand. I'll just say one last thing, because when I looked up Andrea Gibson on Instagram, she had this little post that a therapist told her, because she was getting a little concerned that she would cry so easily, but she'd also laugh really easily, and it felt like this. And I love this so much. The therapist gave her this, it's her friend who is a therapist, gave her the imagery. She said, well, when you think of if you have a wound and you have to, an actual wound on your skin and you have to sew it up, think of the needle. The needle goes down into the wound and then it comes up. And then it goes down and then it goes up. That's how the wound is healed, is when we go into the grief and then we let ourselves feel the joy. It's like these waves. And the same thing Carla McLaren said, these are waves. It's not like here I'm doing this and here it's waves. So the only thing, I don't have any great wisdom to say about grief and joy right now. My mind really quite isn't in the, here's the invitation. I don't have an invitation. All I'm going to say is listen to your heart. Your heart knows everything. Not anyone else's heart. You're not here to live from anyone else's heart. You're here to listen from your heart. Live from your heart. And the only way you can live from your heart is you're spending time listening to your heart. You're feeling into your heart. Your emotions will take care of you. Accept them. Accept what's happening in our life. That's the greatest way we can take care of ourselves, is to listen and to trust. Trust that our heart knows exactly what it's doing, and it's giving to us everything that we need to become more fully who we are. Accept. Listen to your heart and fully... You're listening to the podcast, aren't you? It's so worth it. It's so worth it listening to it. Like, and I said, I hear that podcast primarily from an energetic point of view, and I know she said a lot of really wise things too. So that's that. Let's listen to our heart. Let's accept everything that's unfolding. We bless all the people that we have said goodbye to, knowing that they're right here with us. I'll say that. I just remind me. Andrea was saying she talks with her grandmother on the other side of the veil. And I can't remember what the question was, but her grandmother said, what you don't realize is that we are more with you now that we're on the other side of the veil than when we were with you in form. That we're actually more with you. So we welcome those beings who we love so deeply who are on the other side of the veil. They are more with us than ever before. The things in our life that we feel sad about and we grieve that are over, childhood, a job, a relationship, feel it, and we will be, and our feelings will take care of us. And we'll be guided, and we'll be healed, and we'll be able to one day be that bliss and live from that bliss fearlessly. And so let's just close our eyes. If you feel comfortable, you can keep your eyes open. But we close our eyes just to block out the external stimuli and turn our attention inwardly, away from the external world into the internal world. And we connect with our internal world, where the inner cosmos is. Inside of us is everything. Everything that we've ever needed or wanted is right here. We don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to fix anything. We don't have to change anything. We just simply need to go within and hear and to feel the divine light and love as our very life. It is breathing us, it is teaching us, it is healing us, it is guiding us, it is playing and laughing as us, it is creating as us, it is sharing as us, it is caring with each other, with all form. This presence and this power, everything we could ever want or need is right here, right now, giving itself to us. And so it's with great joy and great thanksgiving to know that we are one in this interior world, that when we enter into this interior world, we know that we are connecting with everyone in this room, everyone online, with everyone on this planet, all the different paths and unique ways of being. We are one with all of it. We are never alone. We are always guided and protected and healed and revealed into our greater yet to be. And so I just invite us now, as we know and feel this about the infinite universe and about our lives, just to take this moment to acknowledge any person or situation we've ever grieved. And you can just go through the list and just call their names forth in your inner awareness. You can call them out loud into this consciousness, and in gratitude for the presence that these things have been in our lives. Let's bring them into our room, into this room of this consciousness here and now. Barbara Hawkins, guide the room. the most precious and intimate love that there is, we humbly vow to you all, thank you, thank you, thank you for being in our lives for all eternity. In deep abiding joy and everlasting peace, we let this word be now, and so it is.